Hi guys, David O'Sullivan here, and in this video I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on all of the films I saw across this year's summer movie season. That's right, summer has come to an end now, the award season is well and truly underway, and I thought now would be the perfect chance to look back over the past 3 or 4 months and give you my thoughts on all of the films that I saw across this summer. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to count Avengers Infinity War as the first big summer movie, so everything from Avengers at the end of April all the way through to the end of August. I also saw Cold War recently, and even though that was released end of August, I'm not counting that in this video because it's not really a summer movie, and I see that as more of the first film of the award season really. So everything from end of April to end of August I'm going to be covering in this video and ranking from worst all the way up into the best. Let's just get straight into this, and coming in at the bottom of the pile here I have Truth or Dare. Yeah, and this film was really bad. I really didn't enjoy it at all. You may be thinking to yourself, David, why did you go and see it? Well, I thought maybe I'd get a kick out of it, maybe it would be kind of so bad it's good, maybe I'll kind of enjoy it and kind of have fun with it and, you know, laugh at how bad it is, but just no. I just really did not like this movie. It was just painfully bad. I contemplated leaving the cinema, and I probably would if I wasn't, you know, planning on talking about it in a video, but yeah, it was just painful to sit through. I just really did not like this film, and I didn't find it fun at all. I couldn't laugh at how bad it was because I just found it mind-numbingly boring, and oh my god, I just couldn't stand this film. I thought it was painfully bad, really boring, and I just couldn't wait to get out of there. Next up is The Meg. Now, I didn't dislike The Meg. I don't think it was a really bad film, but I don't think it was all that great either. I think it could have been a lot of fun, but unfortunately it was also kind of boring, you know, for a big crazy film about a giant shark attacking and killing people. It could have been really crazy and really awesome, really fun, but unfortunately it was kind of just bland and dull and boring. And there were some things I liked about it. I think Ruby Rose was actually really good. She was a kind of a standout. The stuff with the shark was kind of cool, I guess, but Jason Statham just felt really miscast. It just didn't feel like the part for him. I kind of liked that he was playing a little bit more of a vulnerable, flawed human character, but he just still felt really out of place in this movie, and I felt like it should have just been more fun and crazy and zany and awesome. They should have just really gone for it. They tried to kind of play it kind of seriously at times, and I was like, why are they doing this? It's a big, stupid, dumb movie about a big, crazy shark. Why aren't they just going nuts? They should have just had a lot more fun with this. And so unfortunately, because they didn't, and you know, it just wasn't all that fun to watch. And next up is Adrift. This is the true story film about the 2 people that were lost at sea with Shailene Woodley and Sam Claflin. And this film, again, I didn't dislike it, but it wasn't all that good either. It was just also kind of boring, and it could have been really enthralling and gripping and, you know, exciting, but unfortunately, even though it was a true story kind of survival film, it was told non-chronologically, and I like films that are told in a non-linear fashion, but in this case I think it was a big mistake for them not to tell it in a chronological order, because every time they cut back and forth between, you know, the past and the present, it would suck all tension from the film. So whenever you felt like you were getting into it, they would just cut away or cut back into the past, and it really just took you out of the film. It just sucked all tension and all drama from the film. Whenever there was a possibility that it could have gotten tense or could have gotten dramatic or engaging, they just cut away, or they just kept cutting back and forth between the past and the present, and I really don't think it worked, and I just thought it was kind of dull. And Shailene Woodley was really good, but other than that, it you know, it wasn't all that great of a film. Next up is Skyscraper, and again, not a film I hated, but it could have been a lot better. It was all right. It was perfectly serviceable. It was a perfectly fine, you know, action movie, but unfortunately, it wasn't great. It was held back by the fact that it just felt very derivative of other action movies. It felt like it was just kind of more ripping off other better action movies as opposed to paying homage to them. It didn't really feel like a loving tribute and homage to the likes of Die Hard and those kind of movies. It just felt more like it was trying to be like those kind of movies and just not coming anywhere near close to them. You know, it really should have kind of like The Meg, but slightly different here. It should have gone for it a little bit more and been more of a hard R, kind of edgy, bloody, intense, violent action movie. Instead, they kind of watered it down into this really kind of bland, dull, kind of PG-13 action movie that I think was perfectly fine, and it was perfectly serviceable. But again, it was just a bit bland, a bit generic, very cliche-ridden, and I kind of enjoyed myself watching the movie. I thought it was perfectly fine, but again, it wasn't great, and it was just a bit bland and dull and boring. Really kind of generic, cliche-ridden action movie, unfortunately. And next up is Solo, a Star Wars story, and I really wanted to like this one, and I didn't dislike it. Again, it's another one that I thought was just perfectly fine. I thought it was just okay, and but unfortunately, you know, that's not really good enough. Like, and I just don't think this movie was necessary. I think it was just a completely pointless film to make. Why do we need to get a separate spin-off film about Han Solo and his backstory? And it was just all stuff we kind of knew already, but it was just shown to us, you know, in a movie. And did we really need to see this film? I'm not so sure. There were some things I liked about it. Alden Ehrenreich I thought was really great as Han Solo. Obviously Donald Glover as Lando, Emilia Clarke as Kira. I thought the cast were really good. I thought the performances were really good from the actors. Visually it was kind of cool, but again it just felt very just dull and just by the books and just bland, mediocre. I just didn't really feel a reason when I was watching this why it should exist. It was like, it was perfectly fine, it was perfectly just okay, but I'm like watching this thinking, why are we getting this film? What is the point of this film? We're just seeing things that we've heard before and we didn't really need to see in a movie. Next up is Rampage, and I actually kind of had a bit of fun with this one. Not a great film, but I kind of got a kick out of it, and it was kind of a dumb, fun action movie that was dumb fun, you know, for the most part. Just kind of crazy, just animals running rampage throughout the city. They probably could have gone even further with it, to be honest with you, but yeah, I actually kind of liked the movie, and Dwayne Johnson, again, is always great. And there's actually kind of a scene in this movie that I thought was actually really quite powerful and kind of like, it almost felt out of place for the rest of the movie, where for the most part it's this big, dumb, silly, insane action movie, but then there's this one moment between Dwayne Johnson and Naomi Harris where he's talking about what happened with George the Gorilla and how he came to found him, the circumstances surrounding how he found George, and this is like this flashback scene with poachers, and there's this great line from Dwayne Johnson that kind of just really took me aback, and it's just like really out of place in the midst of this big, dumb, insane film, but where Dwayne Johnson's like, you know, the poachers shot at us and they missed, we shot back and we didn't. I thought that was actually a really great line, really quite kind of hard hitting and powerful. I think that scene and that line in particular was actually really quite good, but like I said, for the most part it was a big, dumb, silly, insane, fun action movie, and I actually kind of got a kick out of it. I kind of enjoyed Rampage. And next up is Deadpool 2, and I like Deadpool 2. I didn't love it. I didn't go crazy for it like a lot of people did. I don't think it was anywhere near as good as the first movie. I think it had some big problems. I think it felt like it was a little bit of a mess. I felt like narratively, it felt like there was a little bit too much going on. It was like almost too much of a good thing. Whereas the first movie, one of its strengths was its simplicity, because the first film, yes, it was told in a non-linear fashion, but it was a really kind of simple, straightforward plot. Really, just a straightforward revenge film. This film, it felt like they just went too far, really, and tried to do too much in one movie. It's like they threw everything at the wall just to see what stuck. And there was a lot I liked about the movie, but I don't think it was as good as the first film. And I felt like they could have held back a little bit. It felt like they were trying a little bit too hard. Whereas the first movie, it just felt kind of effortless and it just really knocked it out of the park. This movie, it felt like they were trying a bit too hard to be funny at times. It felt like there was just a bit too much going on. But for the most part, I did enjoy Deadpool 2 and I thought it was a good movie. Next up is Sicario, Day of the Soldado, and this was another one that I don't think was as good as the first film. I love the first Sicario. I thought that was a really great film from Denis Villeneuve. This film I don't think came anywhere near close to that original film. And also I don't think we really needed this movie, to be honest with you. Benicio del Toro saved the film for me. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. Particularly the storyline between him and the little girl. I thought that was by far the most engaging, most compelling part of the film. But that aside, I thought the film was kind of underwhelming and disappointing. I enjoyed it. I thought there were some really good things in the movie, but for the most part, it was good but not great. And next up is the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, and I actually really enjoyed this film. Of a smaller, kind of quainter film, not a film with like massive big ambitions, but Lily James, I love Lily James. I'll see Lily James in anything and everything she's in, and again she's really great in this. And yeah, just more of a smaller, kind of quirkier, kind of British film this, and not much to say. Like there's not like a great deal of stuff going on, but I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was a charming little film, and I thought it was really good. And next up is Christopher Robin, the new Disney film, and this film wasn't as good as I hoped it would be, but I still had a lot of fun with it, and I thought it was a very charming, delightful little film. I'm a big fan of the Winnie the Pooh characters and stories from the books. I grew up with those stories from A.A. Milne, and so I've always got a special place in my heart for those characters. And I think the first film, or at least the first one I remember seeing at the cinema, was the Tigger movie back in 2000. So I have a very kind of close bond with these characters and these stories. They always have a special place in my heart, and I really like this film. Like I said, it wasn't like fantastic. I think it could have been a lot better, but I did really like it, and I thought it was a really nice, kind of charming, delightful little film. And next up is Ant-Man and the Wasp. Again, another one which I don't think was as good as the first. I really liked the film for the most part, but it did feel like they were trying a little bit too hard, and there was a bit too much going on. Whereas the first film was a lot simpler. And I still liked the fact that this film felt more small scale. It wasn't some big intergalactic, saving the entire universe thing like Avengers, for example. But it just felt like there was something missing for me. Similar to Deadpool and how it felt like there was something missing without Tim Miller directing. This film, it felt a similar kind of thing with no Edgar Wright influence. And yes, Edgar Wright didn't actually direct the first movie, but you can tell there was a lot of an Edgar Wright in that first movie. He still had story credit, producer credit. So I feel like a lot of the best things about the first movie probably did come from Edgar Wright. And so with this film, with no Edgar Wright at all, it kind of felt like there was something missing. It didn't feel quite like the first movie. I still enjoyed it. I still had a good time, but it just felt like there was something missing for me, and I didn't like it as much as the first film. And next up is Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and I actually really like this movie. I really don't get the hate for it. I put out a tweet when it came out saying, I'm not surprised that people aren't loving it, but I am surprised as why people are hating it, because I didn't think it was like an amazing film, but I thought it was actually really quite good, and I think it was easily the best movie since the original. And I think it was way better than Jurassic World, and I did like Jurassic World, but upon rewatch I really didn't like it anywhere near as much as I did the first time round. And I thought the reason why basically I think this movie was way better than Jurassic World, and why I actually thought the film was pretty good, is that it felt like it had something to say. It felt like it was actually about something, whereas Jurassic World, for example, didn't feel like it was about anything. It didn't feel like it was trying to say anything. It was just, I don't know, it was just a thing, and stuff happened. But with this film, there was obviously some stuff that carried over from Jurassic World that I wasn't crazy about, like the weaponizing the dinosaurs and selling them off to the military. I didn't care for any of that stuff. But that aside, I like that they kind of got rid of a lot of the stuff from Jurassic World, and it just felt different. It felt like it was actually saying something there, with the themes and the messages put across about, dinosaurs being animals, and they've got rights too, and all that kind of stuff. It felt like it had something to say, and I really liked how Jay Bayona directed this movie. I thought it looked really great. It wasn't a fantastic film, but I thought it was a definite improvement over Jurassic World, and I think probably one of the better Jurassic Park sequels we've gotten. And next up is Mary and the Witch's Flower. This was an anime film that came out, a Japanese film, although it is based, I think, off a British book, so it is actually an English kind of story with English characters. So funny enough, this probably was one of the first anime films where I felt like it probably would have actually been better in the dubbed version or in the English language, because it is actually based off kind of an English story with English characters. But I did actually have a lot of fun with this movie. I thought it was really good, actually. Probably an anime film that would actually do better commercially with mainstream audiences. I don't know if it did or not, but it's because it's based off more of a kind of more commercial, mainstream kind of story. It's a little bit like Harry Potter in a way, but despite fears I had going in that it might have been too similar to Harry Potter, I felt like a little bit of a Harry Potter rip-off. It took some twists and turns, and I'm not sure if these twists and turns are the same as the book or not, the same as the source material, but I like the fact that it went in a different direction to what I was expecting. It wasn't just a generic kind of like Harry Potter rip-off. It felt different. It felt like, you know, Japanese animated films usually feel. It felt a little bit more like, say, a DreamWorks film than a Pixar film, whereas most kind of like Studio Ghibli animated films, for example, almost feel like the Japanese version of Pixar. This almost felt like the Japanese version of DreamWorks, and that's a compliment. I think I mean that in the best way possible. But it wasn't quite as good as a Studio Ghibli film, but I still thought it was really good, and I had a lot of fun with it. And next up is Ocean's 8. Again, not another film that blew me away. It wasn't absolutely fantastic, but I did have a lot of fun with this film, and I did think it was really good. I love the cast, you know, Anne Hathaway, Cate Blanchett, Rihanna. I could watch them just doing anything. Really, my only criticism of this film is that I'd like to have seen more of them, and more of them just sitting around talking and just interacting with one another, because of the fact that it was a lot of kind of a bringing the team together for the first kind of like half of the film. We didn't really get a whole lot of that. So if we did get a sequel, well, we probably would get to see more of them and more of them interacting, because that's what I wanted to see more of, really. But yeah, I loved the cast in this film. I thought they were all really great. It wasn't an absolutely amazing film. I didn't like, you know, knock my socks off or blow me away or anything like that, but I did think it was a really good film, and I actually really enjoyed it. And next up is Searching, and I thought this was actually a really good film. I don't think it's quite as good as a lot of people are saying it is. I think people are overblowing it a little bit and saying like it's one of the best films of the year. I do think it was a really good film. Make no mistake, I thought it was really quite strong, and I was really quite surprised by how good it was. The only thing that kind of took me out of it was the ending, and I don't think the ending was bad. I thought the ending was good. I think it was done well. My only issue with the ending was the fact that it felt a little bit of a betrayal tonally to what came before, because this film for the most part is a really quite kind of serious, intense, gripping, kind of powerful film, and the ending kind of becomes a little bit of a you know, stereotypical Hollywood happy ending, and I think it was done well, and I think it was good, and there's things like that have happened in real life, so it wasn't completely like, you know, unbelievable or made no sense or anything. It just felt tonally inconsistent with what came before, because the majority of the film is just really intense, really suspenseful, just really quite kind of dark and just sickening and just really quite powerful and dramatic, and then the ending just kind of didn't really feel like it went with what came before for me, but I still think it was done well. And John Cho, is it? I thought he was amazing in this film. He was like, because really the whole film rests upon him and his shoulders. It's almost just him for the entire movie. I thought he was really great. And yeah, there were some things I wasn't crazy about. Like, there were some attempts at humour that I think worked, some kind of visual comedy, but again, it kind of felt a little bit inconsistent with the rest of the film, kind of tonally. But other than that, I thought it was a really strong film and really quite good. And the next film is The Spy Who Dumped Me, and I actually really enjoyed this movie. It was a real pleasant surprise for me. And again, not one of the best films of the year or anything, but I actually really had a good time with this movie, and one of the things I liked most about it was that even though it was an action comedy, the action was just as good, if not better, than the comedy. Because in most action comedies, the action's never really that great. The action's just a bit bland or watered down or mediocre or forgettable. But in this film, the action was really, really strong. Like, it was just as good a straight action movie as it was a straight comedy film, and that's what I love so much about this film, because it just really went for it. And some people have been complaining, I think, that it was too violent or something, and first of all, it's an action movie, and second of all, it's an R-rated film, so it's gonna be violent, and I like the fact that they went for it. I like the fact that they didn't hold back. They just really went for it with this film, and it was just really full on, a really good time, and I actually really enjoyed it. And next up is Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again, and yes, I absolutely love this film. I didn't love it as much as the first one, but I think the argument could most definitely be made that this is, technically speaking, the better film. I've got a really soft spot for that first film. It's a little bit of a guilty pleasure for me. I don't think it's an amazing film, but I just absolutely love it to pieces. And I just have an absolute blast with that first Mamma Mia film. This one I didn't love as much, but like I said, I think it probably was the better film, technically speaking. It was actually surprisingly emotional. The first movie has its emotional moments, but it's a little bit more hokey, it's a little bit more goofy and silly, and it's a little bit more of like just a kind of fun, campy, kind of schlocky film, as much as I love it. But this film, it actually played it a lot more sincerely, a lot more genuinely. Like there was some real kind of sincere, genuine, powerful, emotional moments in this film that really hit me and that really took me off guard. And I think that was one of the real strong points with this film, because as much as it was a real fun, feel-good kind of family film musical, it was also really quite emotional and really quite kind of poignant and dramatic, and that was an element that I was really not expecting with this film, but it really got to me, and I thought it was actually a really great film. Getting into the top 10 now, first I've got a film that was really quite underrated, probably one of the more overlooked and underappreciated films that have come out so far this year, and it is Tully, directed by Jason Reitman, who previously directed films like Juno, which I really loved. And this film stars Charlize Theron, and she is absolutely extraordinary in this film. And like I said, it's a film that kind of flew under the radar. It's not a big kind of mainstream commercial film. It's more of a smaller, quieter, independent film. But it was a film that I thought was really good. Didn't really have any big issues with this movie, other than the fact that, I don't know if it was one of the best films of the year, it didn't blow me away or anything, but I think it was really well done. The performances from Charlize Theron, Mackenzie Davis as well, was really great. I think she's a real great up-and-coming younger actress. She's just great in everything she's in, and once again, really steals every scene she's in this movie as well. And I love the two of them together. I don't really want to go into more detail on that, because this is a film that does have some surprises, and there's some twists and turns that come toward the end of the movie that took me by surprise, but I actually really liked, and I thought it was just a really well done film. Like, nothing like just absolutely game changing and mind blowing and extraordinary, but it was a really great little film and I really enjoyed it. And number 9 is Avengers Infinity War, and I loved Avengers Infinity War. I don't know if I loved it as much as a lot of other people. I don't think it's like, the best Marvel movie ever. It's probably not even in my top 5, to be honest with you. It's either my number 5 or number 6. I can't really decide. But I still loved Infinity War. I had some minor quibbles and nitpicks with it. For the first half of the film, it feels like there's a lot going on, and we're jumping between a lot of different characters and a lot of different locations. Toward the end of the movie, that isn't really an issue anymore, because we're only really cutting between, the people in Wakanda and the people on Titan. But especially toward the beginning of the movie, it does feel a little overwhelming, a little bit like there's a lot going on with all these different characters and all these different storylines and all these different locations. And not that it was hard to keep track or hard to follow what was going on, but because there was so much going on, every time we cut back to a certain storyline or a certain group of characters, it felt like it almost been like an hour since we were last with them. But other than that, and other than the fact that I felt like they could have given Thanos a little bit more on-screen backstory, because we got one flashback with him and Gamora, and then one scene with him and Doctor Strange where he talks about Titan. Other than that, we really didn't get a whole lot of Thanos' backstory. I would really like to have seen more of his backstory and seen more of what actually happened to him on Titan and all that. But other than that, I did love this movie. I thought it was really great. I had a blast with it. I've seen it more times in the cinema than any other film this year, so I did love the movie. I had some little issues with it, some little gripes, some little nitpicks, but nothing major really, and I still love this movie. I thought it was a real great time. And next up is American Animals, and this is a film that really surprised me. It was a real good film. I'm not sure if it's one of the best films of the year. It's not quite in my top 10, I don't think, but it was still a really great film. And from the very beginning of this movie, there's like a match cut between the eye of an animal in a painting and the eye of Barry Keoghan, and as soon as that happened I was like, yeah, I'm gonna like this film. And it was just really well directed by Bart Layton, I think his name is, who directed The Imposter, which is one of the best documentaries I think I've ever seen. And it's a kind of blending of documentary vignettes with a dramatized kind of reconstruction of past events. But it's more of a kind of a movie than it is a documentary, whereas The Imposter was more a documentary with some reconstructed, dramatised elements. This is more of just a straight up, kind of crime drama, heist thriller movie, but we've got some documentary vignettes interweaved with those elements at the same time, and I thought it was done really well. You think cutting back between the kind of the dramatised reconstruction of past events with these documentary vignettes would take you out of the film, but it absolutely didn't. They were blended together so incredibly well. I can't remember the last time I saw a film that blended real world kind of documentary elements with a kind of dramatized reconstruction of past events together this well. It was just done so incredibly well, really quite unique and interesting and engaging. My only issue with the film is that it felt a lot longer than it actually was, and I'm not sure why, because it wasn't necessarily slow paced, like it didn't drag. I was never bored, I never lost interest, but for me it did feel a lot longer than it was. Maybe that's because it had kind of documentary elements to it, and documentaries tend to feel longer and slower paced than just straight up movies. But for the most part, I thought this was a really great film. The performances from Barry Keoghan and Evan Peters in particular were really great. They just really did an amazing job in this movie. Like Evan Peters was just remarkable. I thought he was great. And yeah, not one of the best films of the year. It doesn't quite crack my top 10, I don't think, but still a really strong film that I thought was really good. And next up is Incredibles 2, and I absolutely love this movie. I still probably prefer the first movie, but that's not a knock on this film at all, because it was an absolutely incredible, no pun intended, sequel to the first movie, and a real kind of great kind of just superhero movie. Brad Bird, it does such an incredible job with these films, because they're not just great animated films, they're not just great kind of superhero movies, they're just great films in general. And like the first movie, he shoots it like it's a live action film. Seriously, there's some action sequences in this movie that are just so intense and so thrilling, and they're just so good that they just make you think about how kind of bland and mediocre a lot of kind of live action sequences are in other action movies, because the action sequences in this movie are like more thrilling and intense and exciting than like 99% of action sequences you get in live action movies nowadays. It was just so well executed, so well done. I just loved everything about this movie. The villain probably wasn't as strong as the first movie, but they're going for something slightly different here, and they wanted to keep the focus on the family and on the heroes, which I understand. But obviously, Syndrome in the first movie was a far superior villain. Other than that, I don't really have any big issues with this movie. I had a blast with this film. I thoroughly enjoyed it from start to finish, and I thought it was absolutely amazing. And next up is Revenge. This is a film I saw early on in the year. It's a French film, and it's kind of like this throwback to kind of 80s style kind of action movies. It's got a serious element to it as well. But what I loved about this movie was that the director, and it's a female director, she really just, went for it. And it was just like a real great kind of just fun throwback to kind of insane 80s style action movies. And it was just hardcore. It was just violent. It just went for it. And I just absolutely loved it. And it kind of became so crazy towards the end that it might turn some people off, but I just absolutely loved it. And the more it went on, the more and more I liked it. And it was just absolutely my kind of film. And I just thought it was incredible. Getting into top 5 here, and at number 5 I've got Mission Impossible Fallout, and I think this is probably easily the best kind of mainstream action movie we've gotten so far this year. I thought it was just absolutely fantastic. I think it's probably the best Mission Impossible movie, and that's saying something because I love Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation, but I think this is probably the magnum opus of the series. It just really blew me away. There really wasn't anything in this film that I didn't like. I thought it was just absolutely extraordinary, and the action sequences in this movie are absolutely jaw-dropping. Some of the most incredible, breathtaking, awe-inspiring action sequences I think I've ever seen put to film. Just the whole halo jump that's done in one long continuous take, that is absolutely incredible. The whole helicopter chase sequence at the end is extraordinary. Just the car chase, the motorcycle chase, it's just every single action sequence in this movie is amazing. Every single action sequence could be like the best part of the movie. There's just so many all-time great moments in this film. I had an absolute blast with it. I'm probably going to go out and see it again before it leaves cinemas because I loved it so much. So yeah, Mission Impossible Fallout. Coming in at number 4 is BlacKkKlansman, and the latest film from director Spike Lee. And this film, I heard a lot of hype going in, one of the best ones of the year, one of the most powerful films we've ever seen, and I didn't want to buy into the hype because I didn't want to, set myself up for disappointment, and sometimes people overblow it a bit when they say things like that, but it really is one of the most powerful films of the year, if not the most powerful film. It's a film that you kind of have to see, you know. It's like you can't really kind of explain quite how powerful and how hard-hitting it is. It needs to be seen to be believed. But yeah, I just thought this film was just absolutely incredible, really hard-hitting, really powerful, really intense. I think easily the most powerful and important film that I've seen so far this year, and it was a real kind of immersive experience for me watching this movie, because I think some of the best films are the films that really suck you in. They really draw you in to the point where you forget you're watching a film, because you just become so engrossed and so immersed into the world of the film. You feel like you're in it, you feel like you're living within it, and that's what this film did for me. It really sucked me in, it really drew me in. I found it so incredibly immersive, and I just thought it was one of the best films of the year. And into the top 3 here, at number 3 I've got Hereditary, and I think also this is one of the best films of the year. And that is saying something, because I'm not a big horror fan at all. If you know anything about me, I'm not into horror movies generally speaking. I like kind of more of the weirder indie kind of horror films that aren't like the big mainstream stereotypical jump scare horror movies. I like more of the kind of the weirder, smaller indie stuff. But with this film, I think it was like the best blending between kind of indie horror and mainstream horror. And there's a lot of people that really didn't like it, but there's a lot of people that really did love it, and I'm definitely one of the people that loved it. And again, that's saying something coming from me, because I'm not a big horror guy at all, but I love this film. It really got under my skin, because a lot of horror films, they don't affect me on a deep level. You know, they're just like jump scares, and they're just like, it's just surface level kind of scary. But this film really got to me. It really kind of got under my skin and unnerved me and kind of disturbed me more than any film I can think of in recent memory anyway. Incredibly well directed film, phenomenally acted. Toni Collette was absolutely amazing, as was everyone else in the movie. And yeah, I think it is one of the best films of the year, and one of the best horror films I've seen in quite a while. Coming in at number 2, this is again another film that is quite different, and it's First Reformed, starring Ethan Hawke, directed by Paul Schrader, who was a writer of such Scorsese films like Taxi Driver, for example. And this is a film that I really didn't know anything about going in. I knew it was about a priest, and Ethan Hawke was in it. That was about it. But it really kind of floored me, this film. It really just kind of blew me away. I didn't know what to expect going in. I really didn't know anything about it. But just the performance from Ethan Hawke was absolutely extraordinary. Probably the best performance by a male actor I've seen so far this year. He was just absolutely amazing in this film. And just the film itself, it's hard to describe. It's, again, another one you kind of have to see it in order to believe it. I can't really talk about it a whole lot here, because it's a kind of a hard film to talk about, but it's like this priest who's going through this kind of existential crisis almost. It's hard for me to talk about, and it's a weird one to describe, because it's a kind of film that I don't know if it would be for me or not. I don't know if it would be my cup of tea, but it really got to me, and it really hit me on a really quite deep level. It's very subtle, but it's also very powerful at the same time. It gotten to a point where it felt like kind of propaganda, it felt like some kind of political statement or something, but it never did. And I thought it was just so incredibly powerful. Ethan Hawke's performance was just so amazing, and by the end of the film I was just kind of left speechless, and I think it's just one of the best films I've seen this year. But coming in at number 1, I have Leave No Trace. And again, I know these films at the top of the list aren't really summer movies, but I'm just really counting the films that I saw over the summer, the films that were released over the summer, and ranking them from worst to best, regardless of like how good a summer popcorn movie they are. I'm just ranking them in terms of quality, really. And Leave No Trace is one of the best films I've seen so far this year. And it was, again, another film that was so incredibly immersive that it really draws you in, and it feels like you're living in the world of the film. You're there with these two characters played by Ben Foster and Thomasin McKenzie, who deliver two of the best performances I've seen so far this year. It's such a naturalistic, and it's such a kind of authentic film. It doesn't feel like you're watching for 1 second. It doesn't feel anything like watching actors in a movie. It just feels so unbelievably real and natural and authentic, and I Absolutely love this film. Like, it is slower moving, it is more meditative in a way. You know, it's not some fast-paced, intense kind of high energy octane film or anything like that, but it's a film that really drew me in. I just found kind of like very subtle but very kind of deeply moving and powerful as well. Just very just authentic, very just honest and powerful and beautiful and moving, and I just absolutely love this film, and I think it might even be like my second favourite film of the year so far. Deborah Granick, I think, is the director of this movie. She directed such films like Winter's Bone, for example, with Jennifer Lawrence, and it was just such a phenomenally directed movie, and I just thought it was fantastic. So there we go. My number one film is Leave No Trace. There's been a lot of mediocre films this year, particularly the summer movies haven't been all that great, but at the same time there's been some really strong films, some really quite powerful and quite moving films, some really quite kind of just real important films as well, films that are really kind of like, I've got something to say. A lot of films, like towards the bottom of the list, didn't really feel like they were about anything or trying to say anything, or felt just kind of a bit bland and boring and forgettable, but especially the films that came towards the top of my list I thought were just really powerful, really moving, just incredible pieces of cinema. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up my video of the summer movies I saw this year, everything I saw ranked from worst to best. So that pretty much wraps up this video of my thoughts on the summer movies that I saw ranked from worst to best. What were your favourite films that you saw over this summer movie season? Do you agree with my list? Did you see some films that I didn't see? What were your favourite summer movies? And what do you think was the best film that was released this summer? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, if you like this and you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to see more. But with that said, I've been David O'Sullivan. I'll see you next time.